Importing geometry from other software can be done in a number of ways. We're going to show here how to do it from Rhino, which probably most of you will be familiar with. We have here a random shape made into 3 different objects. We're just going to make a material also, just to demonstrate how it shows up when we export it. So I'm going to make the material and choose a random texture and apply it to one of them so we can see how it looks. And then, as you know, Rhino uses NURBS and Unreal Engine and most other software uses meshes. So when we export this, type export, I'm going to put it here on my desktop in a folder called export, and I'm going to make a new folder for it. And inside there, I'm going to suggest again that you call it SM for static mesh shapes, we can call it. And I would also suggest that you always add a number to the file, because you never know if you're going to export it once or several times, and it's good to keep and to not overlap them. Again, since Unreal Engine uses meshes, we should export either as OBJ, but I would prefer FBX. And when you save, you will see that the message comes up. We can say OK here, and another message after this for meshing the objects. And we can see here, I think on the preview, how it suggests to look. And obviously this is a lot of polygons. So we can go down perhaps, depending on how many objects you think you will have. Like something like this, we will start to see the polygons a tiny bit. If we really want to be precise, we can mesh the objects before we export. But for now, we are happy with this. So we go OK. And then we go back to Unreal Engine. And we want to make a new folder for this, which I've already done here. For you can see here under SM Rhino imports. And in here, we make a new folder for O2. And I'm going to show you why it's good to have a separate folder for each export. Is that in fact what we called it? I'm just going to go back and check. Yeah. So in here, then we can click import. And we find our file, import. Will show us a dialog box for this. Most of the time, you can just go ahead and import, unless something really weird shows up. You will see then that it creates not just the objects. Here we have one separate thing for each object. We have one texture file, and we have 2 materials. And the asterisk here, by the way, shows that it's not yet saved. So we can click Save All, and then that asterisk would disappear. So you can see underneath here what is what. So material, texture, material, static mesh. And to import them, you simply select all of them and you drag them in. And there we have it. And one thing that you will notice is that the gizmo is actually not related to the object. It's over here. And this is because of the 0, 0, 0 point in Unreal Engine in relationship to the 0, 0, 0 point in Rhino. So we're going to go back to Rhino for a second. And if we zoom out here, we can see that the object is not at the 0, 0 point. So if you're exporting just an object at a time, then I would suggest that you always move the object. We can select a corner, perhaps, and you move it to the 0, 0 point. And to do that again, this is not a Rhino tutorial, but in this case I just select the objects, click, type in move, and make sure that I have project, so that wherever I click and move, it doesn't relate in 3D, but only in plan in this case. And I click on the corner I want to be in the 0, 0 point, and I type 0 on my keyboard and enter. And then now it moved to the 0, 0 point. So we're going to try and export this again. I'm going to create one more object just to demonstrate one other point here. So I'm going to make a plane. I'm going to put it straight down the middle here. And I'm going to make a new material for this. And choose another texture and apply it. There we go. So now I'm going to export this again. And just like we said before, I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to check what I call the other one. Actually, we should have called that one 02. So in this case, I'm going to change this to 03 in the correct folder. Same there. We can check again the preview. Okay, we're happy with that. We go back to Unreal Engine. And we go back and we create a new folder called 03. Open that one. Import. Find our objects. Import. Done. And we will be able to see here that we have the two textures and we have the two different materials. And I'm going to try to import these ones now. I'm going to move these over a little bit. And find the object again. Make sure that I select just the static meshes. There's 4 of them. And import. And now you can see that the gizmo is related to that object. So it's easier to move around. One thing that you will notice also is that let's say you're working on a model where, okay, now you have added another object. So I'm just going to make a copy of this, and let's say we scale it, or actually let's make another object altogether so we recognize. So let's say we have another object that is over here, and you want to export that and have it placed exactly in this place. Or maybe to make something specific, I'm going to move it from so that it's in the center of this torus shape here, like that. Okay. So I'm going to export this one too. New folder, 04. Again, I'm going to steal the name from the other folder, call it 04. Preview, oh, that's fine. Back to Unreal Engine, new folder, 04, open it, import. Import. All right. And now if we drag it in, you can see that, like, okay, but we want it to be in there and not just like, if I try to move it in there, you see that to get it exact will be difficult. So this is an important step with whatever you import, to always again have it relate to the 0, 0 point of both the world in Rhino or another software and in the world here in Unreal Engine. So in order to do that, we always need to move our objects to the 0, 0 point also in Unreal Engine. So I'm going to select all of these objects. You can see here under General and Transform that has multiple values. We can simply click that and type in 0, tab, 0, tab. And we should do it separately actually for this object. And now you can see that all of these objects are in the 0, 0, 0 point, and this object moved exactly where it should be. So that's a really important thing when you're copying things over, important things over from Rhino. A couple of things that I also wanted to mention here before we move on to the next tutorial is that this plane, you You can see it has a texture, but if we move to the other side, you can see that it's invisible. And that is because every object always have a what's called a normal, or a side that its main face. If we go back to Rhino for a second and we select that object and we go to Analyze and click Direction, you will see that those arrows are pointing in that direction. So that is the normal side of the object. If you have a single object like this, there's a couple of things you could either do. You could either, in Rhino, before you export, go to Analyze, Direction, and then Flip, where you simply click on it and you see the arrows are flipping to the other side. So this is really important to make sure that they are facing the right way. If you want the plane to be visible from both sides, then we can go into the material. There'll be a separate material tutorial later on. We can go in here and select that material. And in this material, that has a bunch of different nodes that we're going to be looking at later on. You can search here. Let's see, I think it's called two-sided. Yes. And you click two-sided. And we hit save. And close. And now we should be able to see it from both sides. Yes, that's it. One more thing that I wanted to show before we move on is UV mapping. And you can see that maybe this kind of texturing is not exactly the way we want it to be, and we can change the UV mapping and the way that materials are tiled within Unreal Engine. If you're importing something from another software, I would suggest that you take care of this in that software. So we go back to Rhino for a second, and I'm just going to make a quick mapping. Perhaps some of you are not familiar with how to do this, so just follow me here. If I want to first, I'm going to hide all the other objects for a second. So I'm going to redo the mapping for this object first. So we go to Properties, we go to Texture Mapping, and for this one we want to have a box mapping. And we click wherever in one of the corners, and let's say we want it to be square for sure, so we can type in maybe 100 by 100. Oops, redo that. So it asks us for the first corner, the first side, so we type in 100, 100 again, 100 again. Now we have a cube, 100 and 100 and 100. Click enter, enter again, and then we can see now we have a texturing. If we're not happy with this, we can go into, again here, and click show mapping, and now we can scale this map to be fitting the way we want to. And let's say this is good. Maybe we want to do the same for that plane. This one. I'm going to look in this direction instead for this purpose. And for this one we can use a planar mapping. We want it to be square. We don't need to type here. We can just hold in Shift to make it square. Happy with that? Yes, enter. All right, maybe that looks good. So now if we export this, again with a new folder, a new file, take the name from the previous file, call it 05. Yes, we go back to Unreal Engine, and we move these over, because the other one is going to appear in the same place. Add folder 05, import, yes, all good. So you can see now that if we import all of these static meshes, that the texturing mapping is doing what we want to do. And you can see now another problem that relates to a previous video tutorial, which is how to organize the files. Because we were really good with naming everything properly when we exported things, we have here the different folders with all the different objects, and these are all very light, so they can stay here. We don't need to delete them in case we don't use them. But in the world outliner, this is a total mess, and we have no idea which one is which. They could be renamed, but if they're very specific. But in this case, it's just important to keep them in different folders. So in this case, the ones that we used here, I'm going to select them all, and we can see that they are here, and then create a subfolder that we're going to call SM, and we should have a proper name for this, but I'm just going to call them all 5 for now. And we should do this really when we import things, and not when they're already imported, because you will see that eventually you will have thousands of different files, and it will get really messy. One last thing is, if we go back to Rhino for a second, quite often you will have something in Rhino that has, I don't know, maybe 500 or 600 different separate objects, and when you import them into Unreal Engine, you will get one static mesh for each single one. Quite often this is really not needed, and the best way to stop that, if we for instance have, let's say, something like this, I'm just going to make something random, we array this, and we make 10 copies in that direction and 10 in the other direction. Let's say we have something like this. Don't know what this is. I'm just going to select the planes, the surfaces. Or let's leave it like this. Or actually, let's go back and delete this one and just only do these objects. And let's do slightly less. All right. So let's say everything that is gray here actually could be the same object. You don't need to have a separate texture or a separate color for them. So what I would do then is I would join them in here before I export. And in order to do this, I should have put these on a separate layer. I can obviously now just select those by clicking the material that I know they have that separate one, and I change this to a different layer. So now we have all of these. Maybe we delete these because they don't actually touch the other ones. Or actually, let's keep them. So in order to do this, there are a couple of ways to do it. One is to select all of the ones that you want to join and just try to select, type in Boolean union. Some cases that doesn't work. It didn't actually work. Somehow they didn't want to all join. We can try to select only these first, the toruses, and try again. None of them want to join for some reason. These ones wanted to join. Sometimes Rhino is a bit finicky with this, but now you can see that basically these ones are joined into one single object like that, which means that they will only come into Unreal Engine as one. If you have issues with joining these, and also these ones are not even touching, but you want to simplify this, maybe you have hundreds of these and you want to keep it simplified, what I would suggest then is that you select all of these and you actually mesh them in here. We type in mesh, we check the detail. All right, maybe a little bit less detailed. All right, maybe you're happy with that. And now we can hide the NURBS. And now if you select them, we see we only have the meshes, and you can actually join meshes in Rhino that don't even touch. So now these are actually one single mesh. If we bring in the other ones again that we want to be separate objects perhaps, then now we can select these, export, and again, to be proper, we do another folder. Oops, we don't need that folder. 6. Yes, happy with that. And I'm going to hide these ones because they're going to end up being in the same place. New folder. Import. And now you'll see, if we import, we have all of those objects as separate objects, and then we have the one that we joined in one object altogether, which means that we will have much less mess in our outliner. It's easier to apply materials, etc. There is also something called a Datasmith, which is an importing software for Unreal Engine and Rhino that will allow you to directly have a link between Unreal Engine and Rhino, and that will be explained in another video tutorial.